Hey howdy. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to Calvary's Cave, and today we are continuing our journey into the Golden Age. If this is your first time here, all of you anime and manga nerds, just come over here. The cave dwellers welcome you. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss a future upload. And a quick warning for all of you out there, we are covering spoilers in this video. When we're finished with the Golden Age, I will drop a spoiler-free review for you. And if you haven't seen any of my previous videos, feel free to hit the link and check them out. But without any further ado, let's just get into it. It's already been a few days since my last video dropped, and Griffith is still at it with Charlotte, making out for another 2 whole pages. And what's this? Whoa! They're doing a lot more than that. But phew, we get a quick cut to Casca, and she's clinging on to our old big boy behemoth sword, putting it close to her cheek and thinking about guts. You turn the page again, and whoa! Griffith is going crazy, taking out all of his frustrations on Charlotte. Uh-oh. It looks like one of the servants was peeping through the little keyhole, and she saw it all. The servant runs down the hall, and we cut back to Griffith post-wrestling match, and it's clear that he's deeply hurt by what happened with Guts. So he curls himself up into a little ball, and he starts crying. And the next morning, Charlotte wakes up, and she's like, where's Griffith? Where could he be? And he's nowhere to be found, but he did leave a little gift before he left. We cut to Griffith hopping over the walls from Charlotte's house, and then he's immediately surrounded by a whole bunch of guards. They got their spears drawn and got it pointed at his neck. Griffith is immediately arrested for treason against the royal house for what happened that night. Over in Charlotte's chamber, the king barges in upon hearing the news, and he immediately starts searching the room in search of evidence of the crime. Charlotte attempts to draw their attention away from the situation, but the king already found out what he needed to know. Upon confirming what happened, you can see clear dread in the king's eyes. We cut over to Griffith, and he's been tied up, strung by the wrists in this torture cell. And the king is actually there in person to question Griffith on his actions. After commending Griffith on his actions and military prowess up until now, the king immediately reaches for the wall, pulls out a whip, and starts going to town on Griffith, spitting some nonsense about commoner blood being beyond redemption. This is a sharp 180 from what we've seen from him up until now. And Griffith says nothing, he takes the pain. The king starts explaining how much his daughter means to him, and for some reason it starts hyping him up again to start whacking Griffith. The king continues to monologue while he's whacking Griffith, and he talks himself into a trap. Do y'all remember when I said that the king seemed chill? The key word was seemed. We get the craziest plot twist that the king wanted to be with his daughter, and the act of Griffith sleeping with her made him crash out. I was super wrong. The king is not chill. And Griffith begins to exploit this weakness by getting into his head and revealing how sick he actually is. The king actually knows that he got caught, and so he starts going to town on Griffith again, further incriminating himself. You can see the guards in the background, and they're fairly distraught by what they just saw. The king passes the baton over to the torture specialist, and unfortunately it looks like Griffith is about to have a hard time. The king then orders that Griffith remain in this cell under lock and key for the next year. I'm starting to see a pattern that I really don't like, and it's that they're mentioning 1 year a lot. In the last episode, when we were talking about the Skeleton Knight, he said, oh, the eclipse is going to happen in 1 year, and now Griffith is about to be under lock and key for the next year. I don't like the setup. It's not that I don't like it, it's just that I'm getting nervous for what's coming next. So the king leaves the dungeon so he can go back into the palace and go check on his daughter. She's asleep, so he heads over to her bedside, jealousy filling up his mind as he starts thinking about Oh my god, what is he doing? The king is not chill. He is a certified creep. I'm not going to even begin to describe what's happening in this scene. Charlotte wakes up screaming, and we cut back over to Griffith in his cell. He's drawn with this incredibly beaten body, stating that this is worthless. Now, what's worthless exactly? I don't know. I just report what I read, okay? What do you want from me? What am I reading? The king has lost all form of self-control. He's trying to pin his daughter down, but thankfully she calls out to Griffith, stopping the king for a moment as his heart skips a beat from hearing Griffith's name. This gives Charlotte a perfect opportunity to kick him right in the face, and my girl is not playing around. The sole of her foot gets sent past his eye socket, permanently disfiguring his face, forever to be reminded about what he tried to pull today. Where's Chris Hansen when you need him? The king runs away, face all bloodied and misshapen, yelling and blaming everything on Griffith. No sir, I am certain that you did that. I was totally wrong. He wasn't chill. I apologize for anything that I said about him before. We cut over to Casca with the rest of the band of the Hawks. Looks like Griffith called them out to have training in the middle of this random field. Wait, Griffith is in prison. I can already tell that something's about to go wrong. It's just, I gotta keep reading. And And I was right. And my goat, Pippin, is the first to notice. Using his spidey senses, Pippin shouts at the top of his lungs, "Everyone take cover!" And everyone's shocked by it because Pippin never speaks like this. What is going on in today's chapters? So much is happening and it's too much to process. Pippin has never acted like this in the past, so when he speaks like this, I feel the weight of the moment. Even Quercus is spooked by it, but Pippin was right. A bunch of guards start emerging from the horizon and a rain of arrows lays waste to the Band of the Hawks. Rickert gets hit in the first volley and the Band of the Hawks are completely surrounded. It's clear that the king is playing cleanup. Casca takes charge of the situation and she rounds up the rest of the troops to get into formation. As the battle intenses, we cut over to Griffith and he's still being tortured by this gremlin character. This creature takes off the behelit from Griffith's neck and he accidentally drops it into the sewer. I'm sure that's not going to be important later. We're now at some odd jousting tournament and Guts is in attendance in the crowd. Two people are duking it out. We got this one giant fella, Valencia, King of Massacre, and then we got this small guy, Silet, I think that's how you say his name, and he's a warrior from a strange land. After some swift exchanges, it looks like Silet is the winner. Guts is actually intrigued by it, so he unofficially inserts himself into the tournament. Silet, unaware of his circumstances, immediately engages in the fight with everything he's got. Unfortunately, he's up against Guts, and would you look at that, the fight is over. Guts wins. The sponsor of the tournament, who's in awe of what just happened, quickly rushes over to Guts so he can hire him. Guts, of course, declines, but he does get a tip that the Band of the Hawks are nearby, and they're being led by a strong woman, and Guts immediately knows that he's talking about Casca. Am I missing something, though? Because why would Guts be freaked out about this? Oh yeah, it's because this guy mentions that the Band of the Hawks are from like a former mercenary group that caused a big stir about a year ago. Excuse me? 1 year? Time skip! 1 year. Guts be 19 now. This means that Guts finally caught wind of Casca after all of this time. Neat! So we open up to this campsite and we see like a couple of soldiers here and there. They're all battered up and bloodied. Whoa! Judo pops out and we also see Casca again. She's grown so much in the last year that she looks exactly the same. Casca has apparently been working on a plan to bust Griffith out of the dungeon this entire time. The Band of the Hawks are now fugitives, hence the name of the chapter. Judo is basically doing a mental health check for Casca, and he tells her to rest up. Kind of reminds me of Black Widow and Steve Rogers talking to each other at the beginning of Endgame. And Pippin is here too. I see a couple of arrows couldn't take him down. Hey, remember that Silet guy? Well, after his loss, he came here to raid the Band of the Hawks, and he actually does take a few of them out. Casca is next up on the gauntlet though, but she gets washed. And just as Silet is about to make the finishing blow, Guts teleports behind him to save the day with a Leon level one-liner. Really cool, nostalgic reunion time. Even Pippin is wearing a different face than usual. After making the perfect entrance, he immediately orders Casca to lock in and gives her a smile. The remaining band members start freaking out at Guts' presence, and Pippin makes a very genuine smile. Look how handsome and awesome he is. Guts tells Casca to let him cook, so she immediately runs away to go take care of some other stuff. Silet and Guts have a back and forth, exchanging blows, kind of. It's more of Silet trying out different weapons and failing every time. He does use this one ribbon sword to like wrap around this one NPC standing on the side. That was kind of gnarly, so I kind of like that. Guts is still unamused by this guy, so he goes in for the finishing blow. Silet quickly realizes that it's quicker to switch to a secondary than reloading, and that gave him a chance to narrowly escape death. Silet understands that he can't win right now, and he leaves. Guts turns back, and we can see that Casca is eyeing him hard. Casca and Guts are still eyeing each other hard in the next chapter. The rest of the crew barge in and start welcoming Guts. Pippin even sports another grin. Quercus being fake as usual. No time for chit-chat. Casca takes charge and orders the band to regroup, make sure that there's not another possible attack incoming, and Guts agrees, so everyone goes back to work. Later on that night, Guts does find out about what happened to Griffith once he left that day. Casca was actually the one who helped the Band of the Hawk escape that one night, but the Band of the Hawks is a shell of its former self. It is 1/5 the size of what we were 1 year ago. But they did receive a tip about Griffith and where he is, so it's time to bust him out. Judo actually asks for Guts' help and he calls him captain again. Quercus butts in and corrects him and says, "Former captain." Quercus is still mad that Guts left. But who knows? I might be wrong about Quercus. He sounds a lot like Arthur Morgan right now when John left the group for a year. But Arthur's a good guy. You're a good man, Arthur Morgan. Judo starts playing wingman again and plants the idea into Guts' head that, him and Casca can still get together. Casca meets up with Guts later on that night because she wants to have a word with him. This next chapter is called Confession. Get ready, boys. I think it's about to happen. Never mind, Casca just wants to have a sparring match without warning. Guts quickly realizes that she is not playing around right now. He ends the match quickly by tripping her. Turns out this isn't a sparring match. She's just taking out all of her frustrations on Guts right now, claiming that this is all his fault. Guts tries to reason with Casca, but he doesn't realize that this isn't a fight. This is a venting session, and Casca's gonna say her piece. After Casca is finished with her rant, she lunges at Guts with her sword, and to show that he means business, Guts lets her stab him right in the chest, and he places his hand over the blade and it like slices into his fingers. Ugh, so gross. But Guts is clearly trying to convey that he's hurting too. Casca gets the message and she immediately drops down to the floor and starts pouring her heart out to Guts. She gets up and lets Guts know how hard it's been over the last year. She then decides it's time to be overly dramatic by randomly passing out on the side of a cliff. Guts saves her immediately, like opening up that hand wound that he got by slicing up his hand. Yeah, man, that hurts. Casca gets up, stumbles into Guts's arms, and cries about how dumb he is for always being hurt on her behalf. We turn the page and guys, it's time! Casca kisses Guts. No, wait. Guts kisses Casca, let's go! We open to a monologue from Casca. Turns out that her love for Griffith actually faltered on that day that Guts left. We turn the page and oh my god, Casca and Guts are getting to work! At the very least, it is a very romantic scene and not just primal urges splattered all over the pages. And this chapter actually does cover some very dark topics. Guts is staring at all of Casca's scars, and you can clearly see that she's rather insecure about it. You know, she's like, I'm still a woman. I don't want people looking at my scars. But it's clear that Guts has much respect for him, and Casca decides to test if her feelings for Guts are true in this moment. We then proceed to get hit with 6 whole pages of Guts and Casca getting intimate with each other, and then we get slapped with a quick reminder that we're reading Berserk. Out of nowhere, we get jump scared by this full-page panel of Donovan. In this surprise flashback, Guts relives the horrific trauma of his childhood abuse at the hands of Donovan, and this memory interrupts his intimate night with Casca. Guts is reliving all of his nightmares in this moment. He doesn't realize that he's choking Casca. Guts immediately lets go and he apologizes to Gambino for killing him. Unable to form coherent sentences, Guts vents all of his childhood trauma over to Casca. We are seeing Guts at his lowest point. All of those feelings for all of those years, they're coming to a head in this moment, and everything is just releasing all at once for Guts. He doesn't even realize that he's an absolute wreck right now with tears coming down his face, but Casca is actually listening and leaning closer. Guts concludes that the night is ruined, passes a blanket over to Casca, and he decides to take his leave. But Guts doesn't get to decide when the night is ruined, because Casca catches up to him and embraces him. They get back to speaking with each other romantically, and Deluxe Edition Volume 3 ends with Casca and Guts laying with each other, while Guts is remembering that one time that Gambino gave medicine to him to rub all over his nose. And that is it. That is the end of today's video. If this is your first time reading, let me know what you thought about these chapters, and if it's not your first time reading, thanks for essentially watching my reaction to these chapters. I'm really enjoying where the story is going so far. But before you go, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss a future upload. So you guys stay beautiful, and I will see you in the next video. You still here?